to this edition, which is about a week later than I'd originally intended. For an obvious and I suspect understandable reason, I really didn't think it was right to be putting out a cheery video the weekend before Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was laid to rest. This is a bit shorter than normal because the last couple of weeks have rather upended my plans one way or another. But if those with eagle ears may be able to hear something in the background, the outcome is rather pleasing by the end of the video. So let's get straight on and go back a couple of weeks when I started filming for a video that I expected to be out a little bit sooner than this one. The last time you saw this, it was covered in all the things that I had finally worked out where they were going to go and how the canal will go through and the road leading up to where High Elvenhome will be. But it is now time to actually try and put all that into place. One thing that dawned on me as I started to think about that is that, of course, all of this is not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of work to do to turn all this into how I want it to look. And it has to be done in a sensible order. Otherwise, as I've discovered on more than one occasion, you find that you really should have done a particular thing sooner, and that you've now made it much harder for yourself to do. But what is quite clear to me, and what I want to have achieved by the end of this video, is that we need to get trains running again. And the key to all of this is getting the track down so that I can run trains and be sure that they're running smoothly and without difficulty around the track layout before I start worrying about where all the scenery that sits around here goes, or indeed how I'm going to get it all on. That will also mean that before I start on the scenery here, I will correct the problems that I've been having with the platforms at Weathertop and build the new platform for Weathertop so that I'm absolutely sure that everything goes round and doesn't bump into anything before we start getting on with the scenery here. Now, I have started doing some of the work here, which I'll just show you in a moment. The most obvious thing is that you can see white foam has filled the gap that was there before. I spent a little bit of time over the last week really laying out how everything was going to be to make sure that I was putting things in the right place that I didn't need, particularly around this area here, to make it come down at all. And I do. Having that completely blocked in like that is absolutely fine. And as you can see, the two tracks that are going to feed the gas works and the brewery. One thing I would like to say here is that the comments that I had and the quality of the comments was tremendous after the last video. Thank you so much for all of them. I won't try and respond to them now because I do actually want this to be more a video of doing things than talking about doing things. But I will try and respond to them as I come to do particular pieces of work, because I was given lots of ideas about whether there might be access from the brewery down to the canal, various other ideas about that I might want to think about, all of which is in the melting pot at the moment, and I'll deal with them when I come to those rather than trying to deal with them now. One thing I must most particularly watch myself about is I was pretty loose with my language in describing narrowboats and barges and generally things to do with canals. I will watch myself, I promise. It is the great danger of talking about something in which you are inexpert that you don't talk about it very accurately. But thank you to everybody that gave me comments about the canals. Particular thank you to Mark Ireland, who got in contact with me. Mark has indeed experience of canals and being on narrowboats, and I was able to give him a call and have a good chat with him about what narrowboats can and can't do. the upshot of which is that pretty much what I'm planning is absolutely fine. But some really very, very useful things from Mark. I'm very grateful to him for taking the time just before he went off on holiday too, to speak to me. So what have I actually been doing? Well, you may recall that I said that the Viaduct was 1/8 of an inch too tall, and that I therefore had to do something about that, which I've done. If I peel this back, just lift the Viaduct up and push it back, you will see that I have routed, is that routed? Yes. A 1/8 depth into the baseboard. This was done with me looking like the creature from the deep because I had a full face mask on with a respirator. This is MDF here, and you do not want MDF particles in your lungs. And I also had my eye defenders on so that if anything flew up, and a few bits did, but not to my eyes, that I wouldn't find myself injured. But that is now all routed down by 1/8 of an inch. I used a little mini tool on the Dremel, and after this section I will do a short tool time tips to show you the piece that I used to do this, which was really useful. Only cost about 20 quid to stick on your Dremel. Well worth getting in my view, because I mean, for this I was probably using it for a bigger area than it might have been intended, but I felt it would be easier to manage than the larger router, which I've showed in a previous tool time tips. And I was very very impressed with it, and it worked really well. So that was cut first. I've also you can probably see that this now has its downpipes, which you may recall I'd bought some, let's see if I can get this into focus like that, some Model U holder bats and hoppers, which I put onto some nickel wire. The consensus of everybody was that they needed painting. You were absolutely right, they did need painting, so they were all painted and stuck on. And I think they look tremendous. I really do. I mean, I think that really looks really very good. So well done, Model U, for doing them. They are very finicky to put on, but they do the job. So that's been done. I've also made up this section, which was just to fill the gap, which is just foam board and then some black foam board on top, and wonderful happenstance, those three are exactly the right distance to fit me into there. So having done that, I think the next thing to do is to get those all stuck down and in place, and then I will start the business of laying the track and getting that firmly into place and stuck down. The next time you see this, I would expect you to see a completed loop, and maybe, who knows, even something traveling across it. So I'll come back to you once I've completed that work, and we'll see how things are going. Well, as I promised, a return of Tool Time Tips, really just to have one look at this Dremel multi-purpose cutting kit, which is the little brother really to this beastie, which you've seen me use. I use this to cut the hole for the inspection pit in High Elven's engine shed, and is a really good kit. I will put a link to the video in which I did the Tool Time Tips, if I remember, in which I did the Tool Time Tips where I showed this one in more detail. This one is really quite simple. this collar here screws onto the Dremel and is adjustable as to height. One of the videos I watched on how to use this, the chap doing it said something which I thought was really interesting, which is, although this is fixed so that it has inches on one side and millimeters on the other, he said that, you know, by all means use that if you want to use that, but he prefers to do his own measurements rather than trust somebody else's, and I thought that actually made a lot of sense. And obviously the purpose of that is by how much the bit sticks out from the bottom. So I did do my own measurements and set it accordingly. You get 2 bits. There are 2 of the same bit, this one, which is used for drywall, if I bring it into focus. So that's intended for drywall, really sort of cutting things like holes for plug sockets. And the one that I used, which has a flatter end on the top, is for softer materials, such as wood or plastics, to enable you to move around and work. And the beauty of this is that this is much better for, I think, for freehand. I had really good sight lines through the gap here, and I was able obviously to get very close to the edge on the left hand side of the viaduct where it butted up against the foam that is obviously fixed there. And I was left, I think, with about half an inch that I couldn't do, which I had to take out with a chisel, but that was very easy to do. Really easy to use, very convenient, and I could see that you could make quite a lot of use of this over the modelling and various things that you'd want to do. This, as I said, it cost me about 20 quid, probably out cheaper elsewhere. I think I got it through Amazon, if I remember rightly, and I found it a particularly useful piece of kit. So I pass that on to you as a single item tool time tips. Well, the clip you've just seen was a rather brave clip for me, that was the first time that 2 locomotives had travelled around the track and had passed each other. And I mean, I tested everything individually and I was pretty sure they would pass each other, but you can never be too certain. But I'm pleased to say that everything is running as I want it to so far. I will be doing more test runs and getting other locomotives out, but I've gone with my 2 longest locomotives, and the 9F is by far the widest locomotive that I have. So if that's clearing things, by and large, we should be okay. The Coronation did give the platform a biff as it went by, so it's reminding me that that platform has got to go. What will need to be done now? Well, no, let me just tell you exactly what I've done. I've stuck everything in now, so the viaduct is now firmly in place. This joining section is in place. That has been stuck in with a new set of cork across the top. And this piece over here, which replaced where the demolished bridge went, that's gone in. Everything is wonderfully level, particularly over the viaduct. I'm really pleased with that. I haven't yet tested the castles over this part of the track, but it'll be interesting to see if they slow down as much as they used to. The next thing in terms of the track, I think, is that I will get rid of all the paper that you can still see in place, give it a bit more of a test, and then it's all going to be glued down. At the moment, it's being held in place in some places, you probably won't be able to see them, by these T-pins, which are the Woodland Scenic pins that you use actually to help you stick risers and things together. But they're doing their job in keeping the track exactly where I want it. And then I'll be able to stick it all down and pin it and because it's in foam, of course, the pins of themselves will not be good enough. And anyway, I'd prefer to have it nicely stuck down. Putting on FlexiTrack is fun, particularly when you're having to join round a bend, which is not a good idea, but it was unavoidable. For the size of curves I wanted, I couldn't use set track, and anyway, I like code 55, so I wouldn't want to go into using code 80. So that pretty much completes this edition of Elvenhome, which has rather straddled some somewhat momentous events. If you've got any comments, please do let me have your comments. They were so useful after the last one and continue to be. And if you've liked the video, well, please do give it a thumbs up, because that would be very helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, well, please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when I'm uploading videos. But hopefully in 2 weeks' time, when you see me, I think the next thing I want to do is get the platform rebuilt. It's a big platform, but it shouldn't take too long to do, he said, hopefully, because then I will want to make sure that every single locomotive I have can go through that station without giving it a biff. Because I know everything will go over the viaduct without giving it a biff, and around the curves, because these are the two biggest locomotives, and the 9F is the widest locomotive that I have. So if they're engaged, everything else will be. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.